Welcome on board, chosen one. Look who finally showed up. The one they cannot stop talking about when you are not in the room. Yeah, you. The one whose name gets passed around in low voices, like a warning, like a problem nobody volunteered to solve, like a file that was opened, stared at, then quietly closed because no one knew what to do next. They said things about you. They said plenty. They said, "Don't engage." They said, "Watch from a distance." They said, "That one thinks too much." They laughed first, then they stopped laughing, and then they started whispering. Funny how that works. You already know the feeling because you lived it long before you had words to describe it. You know what it is like to be underestimated, dismissed, treated as though you were slow, lucky, or always one step behind when, in reality, you were watching everything with patience. People expected you to bow, to shrink yourself, to make others feel taller by pretending you were smaller. But something changed. It did not happen with applause or celebration. It happened quietly, behind closed doors, in conversations you never heard, where your name suddenly carried a different weight. People stopped challenging you directly. Instead, they started working around you. That was not your imagination. It was a pattern. They live in a world that depends on labels, categories, and predictable behavior because those things make them feel safe. Then you appeared. No label stayed attached to you for long. No box could hold you. No rule explained you completely. That uncertainty unsettled them. They noticed how you listened more than you spoke. They noticed how people often revealed their own weaknesses while trying to impress you. They noticed how you remembered details everyone else forgot. Most of all, they noticed you never rushed to prove yourself because you already knew your value. You understood something most people never learn. The loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest. Real strength rarely needs to announce itself. That is why conversations changed whenever you entered. Confident people suddenly hesitated. Easy jokes disappeared. Manipulation stopped working. Guilt no longer controlled you. Fear no longer rushed you. Pressure no longer forced your decisions. Behind closed doors, people quietly repeated the same warning. Don't engage with that one. They're too smart. The truth is simple. While everyone else competed for attention, you studied behavior. While they chased approval, you built awareness. While they reacted emotionally, you collected patterns. They thought silence meant weakness, but every moment you stayed quiet became another lesson. Every insult revealed another insecurity. Every lie exposed another hidden motive. They believed you were falling behind when, in reality, you were gathering information that would eventually place you several steps ahead. Their confidence began to fade, not because you attacked them, but because they slowly realized you could already see through the illusion they had worked so hard to build. As time passed, the atmosphere around you shifted in ways that could not be ignored. People who once dismissed you suddenly became cautious. Those who once spoke over you started choosing their words more carefully. They realized something that made them uncomfortable. Power does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes it enters a room quietly, observes everything, and leaves knowing more than everyone else combined. That is the kind of presence you carried without trying to create it. There were moments when you walked away without explaining yourself. Moments when you allowed others to believe they had won because you understood that not every battle deserved your attention. They mistook your restraint for weakness. They called your silence surrender. What they never understood was that every step back gave you a wider view. Every setback sharpened your judgment. Every difficult experience revealed another pattern hidden beneath the surface. You were never retreating. You were preparing. Eventually, they noticed that direct confrontation no longer worked. Emotional manipulation lost its effect. Pressure produced no reaction. They could not predict your next move because your decisions were based on observation instead of impulse. That uncertainty unsettled them more than open conflict ever could. People who rely on control become nervous when they meet someone they cannot control. The universe has a strange way of rewarding patience. While others rushed to prove themselves, you allowed time to reveal the truth. While they chased recognition, you developed clarity. While they built impressive appearances, you built quiet confidence that did not depend on applause. That confidence became impossible to ignore. Now they whisper because speaking openly would force them to admit what they already know. They underestimated someone who had been several steps ahead from the very beginning. They avoid unnecessary conflict because they understand that one calm response from you can dismantle an entire illusion built on ego, manipulation, and appearances. You do not react emotionally. You respond with logic, precision, and timing. This is not about pride or revenge. It is about understanding where you stand now. The hardest part already happened. The transformation already took place. The victory was not won through argument, but through consistency. You became someone who no longer needed to announce their strength because your actions spoke before your words ever could. People often ask why someone becomes intimidating without raising their voice. The answer is simple. True intelligence does not need constant validation. It listens. It studies. It waits. It recognizes patterns long before everyone else notices them. By the time others understand what is happening, the outcome has already been decided. That is why your silence carries weight. It is not empty. It is filled with awareness. It forces people to confront themselves instead of distracting everyone around them. Those who depend on masks become uncomfortable around someone who naturally sees beyond them. From this point forward, everything changes. What once looked like isolation becomes independence. What once felt like rejection becomes freedom. What once appeared to be weakness becomes undeniable strength. The people who once questioned your value now quietly study your behavior because they cannot understand how someone remains so calm under pressure. They are not afraid of your voice. They are afraid of your mind. They know you notice details others overlook. They know you cannot be rushed into careless decisions. Most importantly, they know that once you understand someone's true intentions, there is very little they can do to hide behind appearances again. That realization is the reason the whispers continue. The distance grows, and the respect they never intended to give you becomes impossible to avoid. The kind of intelligence that unsettles people is rarely the kind they can measure. It does not live inside certificates, titles, or applause. It reveals itself through observation, timing, and the ability to recognize patterns long before anyone else notices them. That is what separated you from the beginning. While others searched for quick answers, you searched for understanding. While they focused on appearances, you focused on motives. They believed intelligence was something displayed on command. Yours remained quiet until the exact moment it mattered, and that difference changed everything. People like certainty because certainty feels safe. They prefer predictable conversations, familiar reactions, and personalities they can easily define. Then they met someone who refused to fit neatly into their expectations. You did not perform to impress anyone. You did not chase validation or compete for attention. Instead, you watched, listened, and allowed people to reveal themselves naturally. Without realizing it, they answered questions you never asked. They exposed intentions they never planned to share. Every conversation became another opportunity to understand how people truly think beneath the surface. That is why interactions around you began to feel different. Confident personalities suddenly over-explained themselves. Those who normally controlled every discussion became hesitant. Casual jokes started sounding forced because people sensed they were being understood more deeply than they expected. You were never trying to intimidate anyone. You were simply paying attention. And attention is far more powerful than most people realize. Imagine standing beside a calm lake while everyone else is throwing stones into the water. The more they disturb the surface, the less clearly they can see their own reflection. You never needed to throw another stone. You simply waited until the water became still. In that stillness, everything became visible. Hidden motives, emotional reactions, and quiet insecurities all surfaced without effort. That is the advantage patience gives to someone willing to observe. Many people wonder why this kind of awareness often feels lonely. The answer is simple. Once you recognize patterns, it becomes difficult to ignore them. You begin noticing inconsistencies others overlook. You hear what remains unsaid as clearly as the words being spoken. You stop accepting appearances without questioning what exists underneath them. That deeper understanding naturally creates distance because not everyone wants to be seen clearly. People tried to define you with labels because labels are easier than understanding someone who refuses to become predictable. Some called you quiet. Others called you distant. A few described you as intimidating. In reality, none of those words captured the truth. You were simply comfortable allowing silence to do the work that unnecessary explanations never could. Think about a chess player sitting across from someone focused only on the next move. While one player reacts to the board, the other quietly studies the entire game several moves ahead. From the outside, both appear equally calm. The difference is invisible until the outcome becomes impossible to avoid. That is how your mind worked. You rarely responded to the moment alone. You responded to the direction everything was moving. People often confuse silence with uncertainty. They assume someone who speaks less has less to offer. Experience teaches a different lesson. The person who speaks carefully usually understands the value of every word. Every unnecessary explanation creates another opportunity for misunderstanding. Every emotional reaction gives away information. You learned early that restraint protects clarity, while impulsive responses often strengthen confusion. There is an old truth worth remembering. Still waters run deep. Most people have heard those words without fully understanding them. Depth rarely announces itself. It simply exists. That is why people underestimated you for so long. They judged the surface while missing everything beneath it. Imagine walking through a forest where everyone follows the same worn path. They assume the trail represents the only way forward because it is familiar. You pause, notice the landscape, and quietly discover another route hidden in plain sight. The destination remains the same, but your perspective changes everything. Intelligence often works exactly like that. It is less about knowing more facts and more about seeing possibilities others ignore. Another question naturally appears. Why do manipulative people become uncomfortable around someone like you? Because manipulation depends on predictable reactions. It expects fear, anger, guilt, or the need for approval. When none of those responses appear, the entire strategy begins to collapse. A person who cannot be emotionally pulled in predictable directions becomes extremely difficult to influence. That is why the whispers continued. They were never simply discussing your intelligence. They were discussing the challenge of dealing with someone who remained calm while everyone else reacted emotionally. They could not predict you because your decisions came from observation instead of impulse. The more they watched you, the more uncertain they became about themselves. As another old saying reminds us, knowledge speaks, but wisdom listens. You discovered that wisdom grows strongest in moments when everyone else feels compelled to prove something. While they competed for attention, you collected understanding. While they argued over appearances, you quietly recognized reality. And once reality becomes visible, it is impossible to return to comfortable illusions. There comes a moment when silence becomes more powerful than any speech you could ever give. Most people spend their lives trying to be heard, believing that louder words create greater influence. You discovered the opposite. The less you felt the need to explain yourself, the more carefully people began watching your actions. They searched your expressions, your timing, and your decisions because your silence left no easy target for criticism. When people cannot predict your response, they begin questioning their own. You never threatened anyone. You simply stopped chasing approval. That single change forced others to confront something they had avoided for years. Many people build their confidence on constant validation. They rely on praise to feel secure and attention to measure their value. When they encounter someone who no longer depends on either, the rules they understand stop working. They cannot manipulate what no longer seeks permission. Imagine standing inside a crowded room where everyone is speaking at the same time. Voices compete for attention until every sentence loses its meaning. Then one person remains completely calm, saying almost nothing. Without realizing it, everyone begins paying attention to that silence. It becomes the center of the room because genuine confidence rarely competes. It simply exists. There is wisdom behind the saying, empty vessels make the most noise. People who constantly announce their strength usually fear it is not obvious enough. Those who truly understand themselves rarely feel pressured to prove anything. You reached a place where your actions carried more weight than endless explanations ever could. People often misunderstand this kind of quiet confidence. They call it intimidating because they cannot easily interpret it. In reality, your silence is not cold or distant. It is observant. It creates space for truth to reveal itself naturally. When conversations slow down, people begin exposing emotions they were trying to hide. They fill uncomfortable pauses with unnecessary words, forgetting that every extra sentence reveals another piece of their thinking. Imagine a perfectly polished mirror standing in the middle of a room. It does not judge anyone who looks into it. It simply reflects whatever stands before it. Some people smile at the reflection. Others immediately become uncomfortable because the mirror shows exactly what exists instead of what they wish existed. Your presence works much the same way. Without attacking anyone, you encourage honesty simply by remaining clear. Another question naturally appears. Why do people sometimes become defensive around someone who has done nothing wrong? Because clarity removes excuses. It quietly exposes contradictions that were easier to ignore before. Someone living comfortably behind appearances becomes unsettled when another person calmly recognizes reality without needing to point it out. You learn something many never discover. Emotional reactions often benefit the person trying to provoke them. Calm responses shift the balance completely. They remove confusion and place attention back where it belongs. That is why your composure became your greatest advantage. Others expected frustration, anger, or endless arguments. Instead, they encountered patience. Patience gave you time to observe while they revealed everything through impulse. Think of an experienced sailor crossing rough water. While inexperienced travelers panic at every wave, the sailor studies the wind, adjusts the sails, and conserves energy for the journey ahead. The storm may appear powerful, but calm preparation almost always outlasts panic. Your approach to difficult situations followed the same principle. You never denied the existence of challenges. You simply refused to surrender your clarity because of them. As another timeless saying reminds us, a lion does not lose sleep over the opinion of sheep. The lesson is not arrogance. It is independence. Your value no longer depended on every passing opinion because opinions change constantly while character grows through consistency. Eventually, people noticed something impossible to ignore. You no longer entered conversations trying to convince anyone of your worth. You asked thoughtful questions, listened carefully, and spoke only when your words added value. That restraint separated you from those who confused constant talking with genuine influence. Imagine an archer preparing to release an arrow. The strength of the shot does not come from frantic movement, but from careful focus, balance, and perfect timing. Every unnecessary motion weakens the result. Every measured adjustment increases precision. Your words began working the same way. They arrived less often, yet they landed with greater impact because they were guided by purpose instead of emotion. People who once believed they understood you gradually realized they had only understood their assumptions. They expected someone eager to fit into familiar patterns. Instead, they encountered a person comfortable creating a different path. That discovery unsettled them because it challenged beliefs they had never questioned. From this point forward, the difference became unmistakable. Your silence was never an absence of strength. It was evidence that your strength no longer depended on making noise. Those who recognized that truth respected it quietly. Those who could not understand it continued whispering, hoping distance would protect them from the clarity they felt whenever you entered the room. Now you understand why everything changed without anyone ever saying a word. The shift did not begin when people started respecting you. It began the moment you stopped measuring your worth by their approval. From that day forward, your decisions belonged to you alone. The people who believed they could define your limits eventually discovered they had only revealed the limits of their own thinking. Most systems survive because nobody questions them. They depend on routine, comfort, and the fear of change. You stepped away from that pattern. While others followed opinions, you searched for truth. That single choice became your greatest strength because truth remains steady even when opinions constantly change. Imagine a blacksmith placing steel into intense fire. The fire does not destroy the steel. It removes its weakness and makes it stronger. Your difficult seasons worked the same way. Every disappointment, every rejection, and every setback sharpened your judgment and strengthened your character. Where others gave up, you learned. Where others complained, you adapted. Pressure stopped being your enemy and became your greatest teacher. You may wonder why certain people suddenly keep their distance. The answer is simple. They realize the methods that once worked on others no longer work on you. Fear cannot control you. Pressure cannot rush you. Manipulation cannot influence someone who already knows their own value. That realization changed everything. Instead of confronting you, they began observing you. Instead of speaking with confidence, they started choosing their words carefully. Imagine an eagle soaring high above a valley while smaller birds argue over territory below. The eagle wastes no energy on every conflict because it sees farther than the rest. It recognizes opportunities invisible from the ground. That is the perspective you developed. Growth is not about becoming louder. It is about seeing more clearly than before. Over time, people stopped trying to change you. Instead, they adjusted themselves around your presence. Conversations became more thoughtful. Criticism became quieter. Respect became visible, even when it was never spoken aloud. Your consistency carried more weight than endless explanations ever could. The greatest lesson of your journey was never proving other people wrong. It was becoming the kind of person who could no longer be distracted by the opinions of others. Clarity replaced doubt. Discipline replaced insecurity. Inner confidence became more valuable than external validation. Now the whispers no longer have power over you. What once felt like rejection was actually preparation. Every obstacle shaped the person you have become today. Every challenge refined your judgment. Every setback prepared you for a future that required strength instead of comfort. So continue moving forward without unnecessary noise. Choose clarity over confusion, discipline over impulse, and truth over appearance. Let your actions speak louder than your promises, and let your character become your reputation. The people who are meant to understand will recognize your value without explanation. Those who cannot understand were never meant to determine your path. Your story does not end because others finally noticed your strength. It continues because you finally recognized it yourself. From this moment on, your future depends on neither permission nor applause. It depends on your willingness to remain focused, disciplined, and true to the principles that shaped you. That is your real victory, and no one can ever take it away.